Welcome to our forum discussion on the roots of prejudice. We'll be talking about what our prejudices are, where they came from, how they're nourished, and perhaps even how to get rid of them. Let me introduce you to the core student participants in today's discussion. Ratnati Iskandardinata, high school student, 17 years old, and also a talented dancer from Indonesia. From Japan, Yoriko Konishi, whose lovely voice you've just heard. From time to time, we like you to get a sense of what we do in all those times when we aren't having serious discussions. We very often get Yoriko to dance or sing for us. She does both. From the United Kingdom, 18-year-old Judith Reeder. Judith's got a bit of a cold today. It did not come from swimming in the Atlantic Ocean, although she assures us that when she's in England, she does swim in the ocean during the winter. From the Philippines, Raul Contreras. Raul will be 16 years old, patriotically enough, on the 4th of July. He may admit some prejudices, but one he obviously doesn't have is a prejudice against women, or he wouldn't have been willing to appear tonight with 3 women being the only male on the program. Now, on this question of prejudice, perhaps we ought to start out by trying to define what you think prejudices are. What do you think prejudice is, Ratnati?
I think prejudice is a feeling of hate of people as a group or individual toward other people.
You say a feeling of hate. Do you think prejudice is as strong as hate?
Yes. When there is somebody, if he has a prejudice, then the answer will be, I hate such and such.
Well, I suppose that is true. What do you think prejudice is, Eureka?
Well, I have found that if somebody distinguishes between 2 white men, it is not prejudice. But if somebody distinguishes between a white man and a colored man, it is prejudice.
I would define prejudice as a rigid opinion formed about a certain thing before there has been a just examination of the facts.
When a person loses track of the dignity of the human soul and begins to judge others not on the basis of their being persons, but on the basis of race, creed, economic status, that is prejudice.
Well, is it fair to ask you whether you have any prejudices?
Well, I guess so, Mrs. Waller, and being brutally frank, I'm prejudiced against Japanese. Well, not to the extent that I hate them. No, not that way. But I got this, well, as a result of World War II. Because, well, I guess I was yet too young to understand what happened during those times. But I think that what my relatives and friends and the people who were witness to that unfaithful occasion, well, they just more than justify the fact. And I think it's justified for me to feel the same way because, well, I know that my people suffered very much under that rule.
You still as prejudiced against the Japanese as you were?
Well, 5 years ago, that prejudice of mine was, well, slightly fading away. But when Japan stubbornly refused to pay reparations to us, well, the prejudice began to brew again. But now I found out from close contact with Yoriko and other Japanese that Japan isn't ready to pay reparations yet, because as Yoriko said, some of them, and most of them, even have to suffer the cold in the classrooms because they can't afford to heat the schools.
Yoriko, you've got any prejudices?
Well, I don't have any prejudice for Philippines, but many Japanese people hate Korea because the president of Korea made the line, his own line, on the public sea between Korea and Japan. And if the Japanese fishermen go over the line, they are caught by Korean people, and they can't go home for a while. And we are trying to be friends for Korea.
Now that we've started, we better go on around the circle. Judith, you got any prejudices that you admit?
Yes, I suppose I'd better admit them, although I'm English. I have some very foolish prejudices you'll probably laugh. For instance, as soon as I meet a person with red hair, I always put myself on my guard because I have a silly prejudice that all red-headed people have terrible tempers, you know, that they're as passionate as the color of their hair. Oh, and then I have another silly prejudice. For example, when I first met the Australian delegate, Elizabeth Woodgate, who hasn't been on television, I was shocked by her accent because to me it sounds just like a Cockney accent would in England. And hope I'm not conceited or anything, but a Cockney accent in England, you know, most English people would shudder a little bit when they hear it. But she very frankly told me that she shuddered when she heard my accent. So I got paid back for that, too.
Why did she say she did?
Oh, I think she imagines that... she said she really had to forget my accent in order to like me, because it was too formal. I gather most Americans think about that about the English as well. So.
Ratnati, it's your turn.
Well, sometimes I find prejudice against the Dutch people when in school when I learn the history and learn how the Dutch people treated Indonesian. And I have some other prejudices of my own. That's I hate people who are proud and who feel that he is the master of the other people and who thinks that he knows everything than anybody else.
Let's come back to you a minute, Raul. Are there any prejudices in the Philippines between groups of people?
Yes, there are existing prejudices between groups of people. As a matter of fact, most of us still, well, are prejudiced against a group of hybrids, those who have more Spanish blood than Filipino blood in them, and we term them as mestizos. Well, these incidents, usually occur in the schools. As you know, I'm in a school run by Spanish monks, and we have a lot of we have a lot of those of that group studying in our school, and usually they are favored. But we think, and we think that we are right in saying that they are sort of aristocratic, conceited, and high-headed, and sore-headed, and all sorts of adjectives, and they have the foolish idea that they have the royal blood or royalty in them.
Well, how do you get along with these boys in school, Raul? Are there any problems?
Well, frankly speaking, I don't get along with them pretty well. As a matter of fact, we usually fight with one another.
Oh, well. Is there any problem? Yes, Eureka.
Yes, Japan have had many American or European soldiers after the war, and most of them married with Japanese girls, not only formal wedding, and they made children who called hybrids. And I think the hybrids have nothing to be punished, but some grown-ups didn't used to treat as the Japanese children. And grown-ups also used to treat the mothers of children. Japanese people thought that the mothers of hybrids are not good. They are horrible because they married with foreign people, foreign boys, and many Japanese people don't like to marry with foreign people because they live in different customs, and they consider with different way.
You still have a strong, may I say, prejudice in Japan against marrying people from other countries, don't you?
Well, yes.
Eureka,
Yeah.
could you tell us something about the status of women in Japan? We hear the strangest things, and you've been telling me the strangest things. Could you tell us more about it?
Before the war?
Yes, and now. Or before.
Well, up to about 60 years ago, Japanese people thought that the white people are horrible because they are almost red hairs and everything is so big about the bodies. And quite a few people still think so. And in Japan, we think that something to be beautiful must be small and delicate.
You could hardly apply the word delicate to some of the big soldiers we sent to Japan, could you? But I never knew that you looked down on us because we were big. That's a very interesting...
We're always proud of if the Western men are tall and handsome. We consider that yes.
Oh, we are proud to be small and delicate.
What you said about skin color, Eureka, I've heard that the Chinese speak about us as pink people instead of white people. It's so much more difficult to be proud of being a pink person, isn't it?
Oh, yes, you're a pink person.
Might as well face it, Judith. Here we are.
I feel scarlet.
Ratnati, let's get...
I
Yes?
want to ask Judith. Judith, since British has so many colonies and, well, let's say, nearly all over the world, how do you feel towards the people in the colonies?
You
Do you
mean
have
in-
some prejudice?
No, I personally don't have any prejudice, at least I hope I don't, but I know that a lot of Europeans think of the Asians, for example, as rather lazy. I don't mean to be rude, but that used to be the impression we had. You know, when we started our colonization, we thought we were doing good to you. I know that you dislike, for example, in Indonesia, you dislike the Dutch there, but they probably thought they were helping you.
They were not helping us. See, you mentioned that we're lazy. We are not exactly lazy, but they didn't give us a chance, see, and we didn't get experiments to build our country.
Well, Judy, I don't think all Asians are lazy.
No, please, you're misunderstanding me. I said that was a general opinion. Maybe not now, I hope certainly
A
not.
general opinion, but, well, when it's not, it's, well, sort of wrong to say that they are lazy. Let's just say that they've got very flat feet that they can't lift them up. Because you've got to consider, for example, the climate in most of the regions in Asia. Well, it's just but natural. You can't just work with all the warm climate around you. Of course, you'd always feel like fanning yourself, or going to an air-conditioned theater or something else where it's cold.
Is there not only this difference of climate that explains a difference in tempo, but is there a difference in philosophy, too, that perhaps we in the West haven't appreciated, I wonder?
Well, as far as I know it, and, well, I think you've mentioned it in this program, that Indians think that they should never soil their hands. And in the Philippines, I must admit that, well, we're sort of inclined to get white-collar jobs and swivel chairs. Most of us do, especially the new college graduates. We don't want to work with our hands. We want to have, well, big bosses and with pretty secretaries around us. That's the common tendency.
Could you give a proof that we are lazy?
Oh, gosh, now you put me in a corner. I was trying to give you an example. You criticize the countries which do, you criticize the Dutch, for example, but I know the British, when they started doing their colonization, they tried to help the